Hello, everybody, and Happy New Year. I'm Bernie Goldberg, and I'm here with the Renaissance man of the Rockies, John Daly. How are you, John?
I'm doing good, Bernie. How about you?
Good. Why don't we do something different today? Why don't you take lead and take us where we're going for the next 20, 25 minutes or so?
Sounds great. Sounds great. Well, first, I wanted to start off by talking about the sale. I brought this up before that we have for bernardgoldberg.com. We have just a couple more days left. We're running the biggest sale we've ever had for an annual membership to this website. It's just $25. That's 50% off the normal price. That gets people full access to the website, including exclusive columns from you, Bernie, exclusive video and audio commentary, the weekly time machine trips, and also the access to the comment section. It's a real bargain. People have definitely been taking advantage of it, and we hope more of you do. But yeah, this week, today we're going to talk a bit about 2025, looking back on it, and also look forward into 2026. So this will be the end of the year episode. We're going to do this in sort of a interview format with me asking Bernie some questions, and then I'll throw my 2 cents worth in after he's done responding to them. But Bernie, for the most part, does not know what I'm going to ask him. So this could be a lot of fun.
What do you mean for the most part? I have.
I think I just told you we were going to look back at the year. So
that's all I know. That's all I know. Go ahead.
Excellent. All right. Well, I wanted to talk about the first topic, the first question. One of the complaints that we hear from some of our subscribers here is you guys don't talk enough about President Trump's achievements. They want us to talk more about those. So Bernie, what do you think have been President Trump's biggest achievements since he returned to office earlier this year?
First, I think that's a legitimate criticism, actually. It's because journalists don't talk about the bank that doesn't get robbed or the plane that doesn't crash. We tend to look for negative things, and that's why, and Donald Trump has given us plenty of those. So we go in that direction. But our critics make a good point, a valid point. The border, his biggest accomplishment, one of his biggest accomplishments certainly is the border. It was an open sieve when Joe Biden was president. People just walked through, said, hello, here I am. And he let all sorts of people in, didn't know who they were. And they disappeared into the inland United States, and we don't know where they are, what they're doing, or anything else. Donald Trump effectively shut down the border, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. He engineered the extension of the tax credit, the tax bill, where tax rates did not go up in 2020, will not go up in 2026, thanks to Donald Trump's insistence on passing what they call, and I don't ever call it, the big beautiful bill. I don't like the name, but the bill that included an extension of the tax code. He got the last hostages out of, at least the last living hostages, is one who's not living and has not been returned, but he got them out of Gaza. He told Iran, stop fooling around with this nuclear facility. Iran didn't listen, and he bombed the facility, which gave way, which I find interesting, gave way to about a week nonstop of CNN arguing that, well, it wasn't really obliterated, as Donald Trump said. I mean, CNN couldn't accept that it was badly damaged. Donald Trump said it was obliterated, and CNN had to spend a week, one show after another, saying, well, it wasn't obliterated. Whether it was obliterated or not, it was badly damaged, and he deserves credit for that. So those are a few things he deserves credit for. And if we haven't spoken enough about it, we've spoken about it. But if we haven't spoken enough about it, I hope we've made up for that right now.
Excellent. Yeah, I written down some of the ones. They were actually the same as yours, Bernie. I think his biggest foreign policy achievement was actually bombing Iran. You know, the stars aligned with Israel's impressive efforts against Hamas and Hezbollah in response to October 7th. Those went on for 2 years. They had these organizations really in some trouble, and the timing was important on this. You know, Trump came through with those big special bombs that Israel doesn't have, and dropping those not only reinforced our support for Israel, who's of course the good guy in this conflict, but the bomb significantly damaged Iran's nuclear weapons capabilities. They set them back a long time. An added benefit is that World War III did not start because of that. Some people may remember that Tucker Carlson was insisting if that's what we did, that's what would happen. And a lot of him and several other grifters of his ilk ended up being dead wrong on that. So
why do we take Tucker Carlson so seriously, John? I mean it. That's not a snarky question.
No, the reason. Yeah, no, the reason is that he's still he's one of the top political podcasters in the country. So he millions of people still tune in to listen to him like they did when he was back on Fox. We have seen organizations, conservative organizations like the Heritage Foundation really cater to him, really try to align themselves with him. So I wish he was not an influential figure in today's politics, but he still is. Unfortunately, a lot of people listen to him every time he talks, and I think that's bad. I think he is one of the biggest bad faith actors out there. He makes up stuff. He's dishonest all the time. He has created a lot of maybe not created, but stoked a lot of conspiracy theories over time. And so, yeah, and I wish we could just wash our hands of him, as someone who's not relevant to today's political discourse. But unfortunately, I think he still is.
Let me just say this: having a big audience, and Tucker Carlson is proof of this. Having a big audience is not an indication, necessarily anyway, not an indication of wisdom. Just because you have a big audience doesn't mean you're bestowing wisdom to that audience.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And that was another achievement you touched on. Well, you talked quite a bit about was the southern border. I think that was a big deal. That's one of those interesting issues where rhetoric matters a whole lot. When Trump was in office his first term, despite all of the rhetoric he ran on, there were still, quite a few people coming through on the border. He didn't really do anything about it until about 2 years into his first term. But when Biden won, he didn't really change that many Trump policies on the border. But the way he spoke of it, he was much more welcoming, much more inviting. And whenever that happens, whenever a president does that, we see these huge groups of people trying to get into the country. And with him, it was just over the top. And Trump came back in office. He wasn't going to do what Biden did. Obviously, he was going to make it clear that things were not going to be a safe passage for people that travel that distance. So a lot of them did not. And it's, there are policies that make a difference as well, of course. But yeah, rhetoric is one of those on this issue. Really does matter. It really does matter the perception people have of how they're going to be treated if they try to sneak into this country.
I think I mentioned this once before, but so bear with me. I'll do it again very quickly. Donald Trump says things, and sometimes those things have negative consequences, and sometimes they have positive consequences. During his first speech earlier this year to a joint session of Congress, he said something that I think makes perfect sense, and I think had the extra added attraction of being true also. He said, they told me we need a new law to shut down the border. It looks like all we needed was a new president. I think there's a lot of truth in that. We didn't get a new law regarding immigration, but we got a new president who effectively shut down the border. And once again, he deserves credit for that. I personally have given him credit for that before today, but since this is a year-end show, I gladly give him credit for that once again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think policies are helpful because, it would be great when a president leaves office that, so much of the things that are being done right now are through executive orders and all that. It would be great to have an actual law. So to keep some consistency, between administrations on issues like this. So I'm all for, stronger border policy, but yeah, rhetoric counts for a lot. And you're right. I mean, Joe Biden signaled that he was going to be very weak on this issue, and he was, and people listen, and they put this calculation into whether or not it's safe to come here, try to sneak into the country. So
the bad news for Donald Trump on that score is that one of the two reasons he got elected, I mean, there were many, but one of the two major reasons was the border. the economy being the other. And he shut down the border, and he took away the issue that helped get him elected. He took that off the table because now you won, Mr. President. You won on the border. Now you can't use the border against the Democrats because it's no longer an issue. And I know I've said this during the year. What has become the immigration issue is ICE and the raids. And while they're getting some bad people off the streets, there's a lot of bad PR, a lot of bad looks associated with the raids. So immigration used to be the border. Now immigration is ICE. Immigration used to help the president. Now it hurts the president.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think if he had gone about using ICE maybe a little bit differently, or maybe not have drawn as much attention to what he was doing, been a bit more discreet, selective about it, I think his approval rating would show that. I mentioned this before. He when he won last year, he had a lot of support from Hispanic voters, and now his disapproval among them is over 70%.
They've gone adios, yeah.
Yeah. So on the flip side of that coin, we talked about Trump's biggest achievements. Now, I wanted to, Bernie, ask you what you think some of his biggest mistakes or his blunders were.
I'm going to name one thing.
Okay.
This has been one of, if not the most consequential presidents in a very long time. He has dominated the news unlike any other president, probably ever. And he thinks that's a plus because he's in front of the American people every day. And to his credit, he answers questions every day. And Joe Biden didn't answer questions almost ever. But every day there's something new. Every day there's an item that causes controversy of some kind or another. It was tariffs at one point, then it was bombing boats in international waters, then it was the Epstein files, then it was calling people traitors and stupid and ugly on the inside and the outside, and the name calling. And if you're in the news every day, and I think this is why I think it's, if not the most important issue, certainly one of the very most important issues. When you're in the news every day, as Donald Trump is, I think people just get tired of it. They just get exhausted by it. And I think that will be a price he has to pay as the new year unfolds and the midterms are right over the horizon.
Yeah, I think that point about exhaustion is a good one. I think that's what happened during his first term. When we went into COVID and people were tuning in more so even than usual to get some leadership, to kind of understand how they should navigate through the pandemic, and he would turn these press conferences into clown shows, and people were just so sick of it by come election time. I think that was a big reason he lost that time. But yeah, it's something every day, sometimes multiple days, and it just conservative governance, and Trump's not a conservative, but conservative governance is supposed to be like boring by design, and it's just not that way. And I think it's really kind of wearing people down. For me, his biggest mistakes on foreign policy, I talk about it all the time, his handling of Ukraine and Russia has been catastrophically bad. It's been perversely pro-Putin for the most part this past year. We talked a lot about this. I've written a lot about it. The stakes are very high, and the administration has been more of a problem than a solution on this front. I'm sorry to say. Domestically, Trump's tariffs policy, I can't say enough bad things about it. It's been economically illiterate. It's been based on his whims, based on this idea that he's been in love with for decades about throwing up tariffs just to squeeze something out of people. It's making life unnecessarily difficult on many Americans. I'm hoping the Supreme Court puts an end to it within the next month or so. I think there's a good chance they will.
Well, on Ukraine, I think you're absolutely right. I don't think Donald Trump cares which side wins in Ukraine. He just wants it over with. And excuse me if this sounds a bit skeptical. Certainly it's skeptical. I hope it doesn't border on cynical. but I think he wants to end the war no matter how it ends, so that it's another notch in his belt. And another reason the Nobel Peace Prize Committee should look in his direction, which they will or they won't, but that I think is what motivates him. And I think the reason he's tougher on Zelenskyy than he is on Putin is because he knows he can push Zelenskyy around. Zelenskyy needs him. Just this week, Zelenskyy was asked point blank if he could win without Trump, and he said no. It was a brutally honest answer on his part. He needs the United States if they're going to win. I don't think they could win under any circumstances, but he needs the United States. And Donald Trump knows he can't push Vladimir Putin around. Who was at the White House this week? Bibi Netanyahu was at the White House. Zelenskyy was at the White House. Putin wasn't at the White House. Because Donald Trump knows he can't push Putin around, and Putin knows that Donald Trump can't push him around. And the bottom line, as far as Ukraine is concerned, to Vladimir Putin, is he wants all of Ukraine. Now, he may not settle for all of Ukraine this time around, and Ukraine may sign a peace deal, but the crucial point in the peace deal is that the United States provides security. And I want to see that in writing before I believe that's going to happen. Because I don't think Donald Trump is going to commit to 10 years of security or even 10 minutes of security if it means troops and troops going to Ukraine to fight off Russia. I don't see that happening. I'm not saying it should happen, but I don't see it happening under Donald Trump at all. And I think the reason it's as important as you said it is, John, the reason the war is because China is looking at this. If we give in to Russia, China may say they're not going to come after us if we take Taiwan. It's just Donald Trump is not taking the moral position. He's taking the easy position, and the easy position is strong arm Zelenskyy into signing a peace deal and get it over with.
What did you make of Trump's statement this week when he was right next to Zelenskyy, where he said that Putin really wants to see Ukraine succeed in all of this? Did you happen to see that?
I'm tempted to say I don't know if he believes it, but it doesn't matter if he believes it. Who knows what he believes in versus what he says? It was a dumb thing to say, and if he believes it, it was really a dumb thing to say.
Yeah. So let's go to the next topic. So I wanted to ask you, Bernie, what do you think was the most important media story of this year in which the media was the story?
I haven't thought about this. John didn't give me any heads up, and that's the way I wanted it. I'm tempted to say, because CBS News is my alma mater, that Bari Weiss taking over CBS News is a big deal. And it is a big deal. But network news isn't a big deal. So how big a deal is it if Bari Weiss takes over the Tiffany network, the news division of the Tiffany network? It's a big deal if you worked at CBS News at one time and you care about what happens there. It's a big deal if you're working at CBS News because your future depends on Bari Weiss's decisions. But who cares about network news? So that's not the biggest story. Why don't you tell me what you think it is, and I'll comment on it.
I figured you'd probably touch on the Bari Weiss story, but yeah, you brought up a point I was going to bring up too. Most people these days, especially young people, don't get their news from network news. They get their news and news commentary online.
They don't get it from cable either, John.
No, that's true. Cable's going away. I mean, it's not going away, but cable is taking is losing a lot of viewership as well. But yeah, they're going online. Those who are interested in the news, they get their news from videos on social media. It's in this world, we complain a lot about regular journalists not rising to journalistic standards. In this online world, there's even fewer journalistic standards that are being abided by. News consumers in large people these days, they seek out these people online who tell them exactly what they want to hear, who entertain them, who stoke their fear, stoke their anger, stoke their grievances, confirm all their biases. Objective truth is really largely underrepresented these days in how people get their news. I was curious, Bernie, did you, and I asked you about this, I think, in a text, but Ben Shapiro did that speech at TPS USA. I know you said you saw some clips from it. Did you get a chance to check out the rest of that?
No.
Okay. Well, I wrote a bit about this in my column last week, but Ben Shapiro, he stood up in front of the TPUSA crowd and spoke out against, the grifters, the conspiracists, the bigots on his side of the aisle. These are terms he put out there. I'm not coming up with them. But he listed, and I think he was really talking to these online personalities that have really gotten much more popular in the Trump era. But he talked about 5 duties that media conservatives and media righties should have when they're speaking to their to their readers and listeners. I just wanted to list them real quick and kind of get your response to those. So number 1, speak the truth. 2, speak out of principle rather than personal feelings. 3, take responsibility for the things you say. 4, provide evidence of what you're claiming. 5, propose solutions to the problems you talk about. I think what he said was great. However, I don't think anybody who's currently not doing that is going to start doing it now because
that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. I mean, we've already balkanized media. People already are going to that segment of the media that they already agree with. So when he says, speak the truth, here's an experiment. If you have a free day, watch CNN and Fox. Go back and forth between the two. Both of them get it right factually for the most part, but it's 2 different Americas you're looking at. Fox plays up stories that CNN plays down or ignores. CNN plays up stories that Fox plays down or ignores. So when Ben Shapiro says speak truth, are you speaking the truth when you're only telling half of the truth?
Right.
And, the border was a major story during Biden's entire administration. If you watch CNN or MSNBC, which is what it was called at the time, you might not know there was a border crisis at all. But if you watch Fox, you'd sure as hell know there was a border crisis. If you watch Fox, you might not know some of the truly stupid things Donald Trump has done or said. If you watch CNN, you'd know it 100 times a day. So speak truth. It's not as easy as getting it factually correct. There's the whole truth, the whole story. And I don't think we have that. Provide evidence. Sometimes the evidence they provide is accurate. Sometimes it's conspiratorial BS. Yeah.
That's who he was really talking to with that part of it. He just, a lot of people recklessly throw out things that as fact that aren't fact at all, that they're conspiracy. Yeah, a good example, Dan Bongino, when he's going back to being a pundit, I guess, but when he was a pundit before he went to the FBI, he was talking all the time about this January 5th bomber and that it was an inside job. He wasn't just saying, I think it's an inside job. He was saying, it's definitely an inside job. It's definitely something they're covering up. Turns out that wasn't the case at all. But yeah, it's so many people present this stuff as fact, whether it's one election or something else.
The plus, John, is that we don't have to get our news any longer only from CBS and NBC and maybe ABC. And then cable came along, and we don't only have to get our news from cable. Now you have 1 million places to get your news. That's a potentially good thing. The bad thing is that you multiplied by 1 million the number of places you can get biased news. Just news tailored to a particular audience because that's how you make money. You cater to a particular audience. By the way, I don't know if can you see yourself in a monitor, John?
Oh, geez. I just looked at it. Let me fix that.
Shut the shades.
We did this early and the sun was out, or the sun was not out yet. And thank you.
Anyway,
I was looking at you instead of at me.
anyway, the door has been opened, and now you have a myriad is only thousands. You have many myriads of places to get news, and that could be a good thing and it could be a bad thing. And the fact of the matter is, it's both.
Yeah, and it's really just from what we do here, Bernie. It's additionally challenging because I'm actually writing a column on this. I think it'll be out later this week or next week. But it's challenging because we have to, when we try to do a lot of these things that Ben Shapiro was talking about, and we have to deal with the baggage of a lot of readers and listeners who hear these other people who aren't as careful about what they say. I mean, I've written columns and I've had people reply to them, why don't you ever talk about the 8 wars that Trump ended since he's been in office? And you're just like, because he hasn't ended 8 wars since he's been in office. But stuff like that, we have to kind of negotiate around that, or it happens.
And John, we get punished. I was a hard news journalist before I went into magazine work at the networks, at CBS and HBO, and before I went into commentary. I was a hard news reporter, and I based my commentary on the fact that I was a hard news reporter. So my opinions have to be based on the truth. I could come to a conclusion that half the people may not like, but they're based on facts. And I try to give a nod to the other side, the side I don't agree with, and say, well, this is what they say about it. And we get punished for that. I'm not going to whine. We get criticized for that because we don't say Trump solved 8 wars, because he didn't.
Right.
You know what I'm getting at, John? Because I take news seriously and I take journalism seriously. And a lot of people who watch news, either us or other serious news organizations, don't take it seriously, don't have the same standards, don't understand what journalism really is, frankly. Then they think we're the ones getting it wrong, when in fact they're the ones getting it wrong.
Yeah. And it's a challenge because there's a lot of people, a lot of these we talked about how there's all these people can get their news from, but there are big narratives that many of them latch onto, and that becomes sort of a baseline starting point for a lot of people that then come and listen to people like you and I, and we're like, well, wait, these guys didn't even mention this, what Joe Biden did at Guantanamo Bay, and all this, just the stuff that is not true, but we have to deal with anyway. But I don't want to complain too much, but it's a frustration for sure.
Can I tell you what I see going forward?
Sure.
I see a very rough road for Republicans in the midterms. The midterms are a report card on the president in power, in office. As of today, and I know the election isn't going to be today or tomorrow, it's not going to be next week, it's a year from today, 11 months anyway. A lot can and will happen between now and then, but it better happen if Republicans want to hang on to control of the House, and I don't think they will. History is against them for openers. The party in power almost always loses control of the House, and I think it'll happen again. If that happens, Donald Trump won't get anything through Congress. Truth Social will be where he rules. He'll say things, crazier and crazier things on Truth Social, because anything he says in the political world will be rebuffed by the Democrats who are in control of the House. And I'm anxious to hear your take on this, John. And there's a better than 50-50 chance that the progressives, the left wing of the Democratic Party, will put pressure on the rest of the party and impeach him again. They can impeach him for bombing boats in international waters. They can impeach him for promising to release the Epstein files and not really releasing them on a timely fashion. They can impeach him on 20 other things that they can come up with. I'm not saying they're all legitimate. I'm not saying any of them might be considered legitimate, but they don't have to be legitimate. Impeachment is a political process, and if Democrats want to impeach him, they'll impeach him. What do you think, John?
Yeah, no, you've been bringing this up for a while, and I hadn't earlier, put much thought into it, but I think you're right. I think it's a better than 50-50 chance that they will impeach Trump. He's given them lots of basis, for like you said, you named off a few things there. You could throw in a few other things as well, but yeah, there are all kinds of, because it is a political process, anything that they could use as a basis for impeachment. I think they'll choose one thing. I can't imagine they'll just throw a bunch of different.
They'll go into a room. They'll find the most. They'll do a focus group or two or three. They'll find the right issue, and they'll go after him on that one.
Yeah, and he probably will be.
It'll be under the prompting of progressives who want to be president in 2028 and have to show their credentials. They'll say, you see, I was one of the people who led the argument for impeachment. And if you want to win the nomination and you think the energy in the party is on the left, at least that's where it has been. We'll see where it is going forward. Then you might move to impeach him just to show that you're a tough guy who should get the nomination.
Yeah, and I think it's, if the Democrats have the House, he will be impeached. He won't get an impeachment conviction. I think you have to have 60 votes, and unlike
two-thirds.
Oh, is that what it is? Yeah, and unlike the last time this happened, I can't imagine a single Republican senator would support it. You had a very few last time, but yeah, I don't think it's gonna change anything. It'll be a news story. It'll be something Trump can complain about to his base, that he's being attacked again and all that stuff. But there's no really, I think, pragmatic purpose in it, because it's not gonna ultimately lead anywhere.
Do you think he cares?
No. I think he sort of likes it, actually. I think he likes being the guy who's under attack. He likes being the guy who's got to fight back, who's got to put on the gloves and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, he knows. I mean, if he couldn't get a conviction from trying to overturn an election to stay in power, I mean, nothing's going to do it at this point. So yeah, I think I think he'll enjoy having that fight. He's not busy with. He doesn't really have, as I mentioned before, a legislative agenda. He's just doing things by executive action. It's not like this will get in the way of Congress getting things done, because Congress is pretty much checked out anyway. They have been for the past year or so, and I would argue even before that. But yeah, I don't see a downside for him, to be honest, in all this. I don't think he cares about the Republican Congress being punished for what he's been doing in office. It's just, I think he's just kind of, this is a you only live once presidency, I think, in this second term, Bernie.
His third term, if he hopes, will be under the presidency of J.D. Vance, his vice president. And if the polls are hold up, well, 2028 is way, way off in the future. But the polls are overwhelmingly putting J.D. Vance ahead of everybody else for the nomination. But that's over many, many hills and many horizons. That's a long way off. Yeah,
no, that's a good point. I mean, you look back at history, and a lot of people that were leading the Republican polls and Democratic polls at a certain time in the cycle. Scott Walker, at one point, I don't know if people remember him. He was leading the Republican polls early on to run to become president. Rudy Giuliani, another one, and they ended up failing miserably once it was time. So yeah, Vance does have that advantage of being the vice president, but this is so far away. I don't think I don't think he can pay any attention to those polls right now.
No, and I shouldn't have brought it up.
Well, Bray, I'll switch topics again, because I think that I did want to ask you about someone I know you're a big fan of. This person has been in the news a lot in past months. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Bernie, you're not actually a fan. I was joking there, but not all that long ago, she was one of Trump's most loyal foot soldiers. He's big conspiracy nut who was always willing to say crazy things. MAGA loved her for it. People remember her dressing up in the clown show, I think, for the State of the Union, the MAGA gear and everything. But she split with Trump recently on the release of the Epstein files. She wanted them out there in the public domain, or apparently that was her political position. Trump, of course, did not, and this led to a political conversion of sorts, where she's now out there, slamming Trump pretty hard and even apologizing for some of her previous over-the-top behavior. And perhaps predictably, some in the liberal media now just can't get enough of her. They love having her on and letting her unload on Trump, while MAGA, on the other hand, is calling her a traitor, and they're saying she's a liberal. And Bernie, I'm curious what you think about all this drama.
The single biggest takeaway is something that she should have realized when she started speaking out, not against Donald Trump, but in holding a contrary opinion, God forbid, to the one that he held. You could be with Donald Trump 99% of the time. If you're publicly not with him 1% of the time, you're fair game as far as he's concerned. There's no loyalty. Donald Trump expects the kind of loyalty that royalty gets, not the way a political leader gets. He expects total loyalty, total concession to everything he believes and everything he wants you to believe. And she violated that, and now she's Marjorie Traitor Greene.
That's right.
And that's on him, not on her.
Right.
I was never a fan of hers, but at least she stood up for principle. She said she wanted the Epstein files released a long time ago, and she said it more recently. Her position didn't change. His changed. Dan Bongino's changed. Kash Patel's changed. So I'm not feeling sorry for her. She was a big fan of Donald Trump. And when you're a big fan of Donald Trump, you better continue to be a big fan of his forever, or you're going to get the treatment she's getting right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think that's right. So another topic I wanted to ask about is political violence. We've seen a big uptick in political violence in this country over the last 5 years or so. This year was certainly notable and concerning with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It was also just confirmed that recently arrested January 5th bomber, or would-be bomber, that I brought up earlier. He is now saying he had bought into the stolen election narrative, and that's what motivated him to try and kill people at the Republican and Democratic headquarters. And on a side note, there's even a possibility this guy might fall under the pardon, the January 6th pardon that Trump put out there, because of how broad it is in the wording. But I'm sure his defense attorney will be trying that anyway. But I'm curious, as we head into 2026, do you think we're going to see more political violence, or do you think some of these, things like the Charlie Kirk assassination that some on the left did not handle well, do you think that's going to get people to, at some point, think twice about this stuff, or where do you think we're headed?
Well, the first thing is, anybody who pulls the trigger is the one responsible. That said, we better watch our language. You start to talk nasty talk, violent talk, especially if you're the president of the United States, and somebody's going to take you seriously. I'm concerned about the things he says about journalists. Somebody's going to say, well, Donald Trump said they're traitors and this and that, and enemies of the state and enemies of the people. He's got to watch his mouth. Everybody's got to watch our mouths, because you're dealing with some people who are on the borderline crazy. Now, I don't think we should tailor our commentary, if it's reasonable commentary, and say, well, there may be somebody who's crazy out there who's going to take it the wrong way, because that crazy person could read the directions on a Betty Crocker cake mix box and go off and shoot 20 people. So I am not suggesting that people giving opinions in the public sphere say there are crazy people out there, I got to be careful. But you got to be careful because there are people who are not clinically crazy, who are listening to what you say, taking it seriously, thinking the people that Donald Trump puts in his crosshairs, his rhetorical crosshairs, they will put in their automatic weapons crosshairs. And you got to watch what you say. We got to tone it down. I think it's a very bad place that we're in, and I don't see it getting better until Donald Trump publicly says this has got to stop. And I don't see that as even a vague possibility.
Yeah, I think that's largely right. And we bring up Trump. There's obviously been a lot of left-wing political violence. The guy that was targeting Brett Kavanaugh a few years ago, he didn't get very far. He had sort of a change of heart. But when people talked to him, it was interesting. His reasons were basically all this far left rhetoric that had to do with abortion and all this stuff. And it really does. There is so much reckless.
People, John, they're not the people you're talking. They're not clinically crazy. They're not
Right.
clinically mentally ill. They can try to use it as a defense, but it won't go very far. But there are people out there listening to a whole bunch of stuff that I personally don't even know about. I don't listen to this crazy ass stuff on social media, but they do. And it's going into their head. Be careful. That's all I'm saying. Be careful what you say, and be careful. I mean, when you're over the top, that is. When you're over the top, be careful. And be careful on what you're listening to, and try to use some judgment and say this can't. Journalists aren't enemies of the people. They're biased, a lot of them. They're not doing the job they're supposed to do. But they shouldn't be hurt. And I'm afraid something like that could happen. I'm shocked that it hasn't happened yet, to be perfectly honest.
No, I am too. And I would think one area where everybody would be able to agree, and I guess maybe in more normal times is that when there are these acts of political violence where the person who committed them, didn't end up killing themselves later, didn't end up dying somehow. But I think it's important to really throw the book at these people and really make them an example. And that's one of the big problems I have. There were several problems with Donald Trump's pardon of all the January 6th people on his first day in office, because to me that was not only a terrible thing to do, but just on the merits. But then you look at someone who's out there. Well, wait a minute. So if I commit, if I really like Trump and I commit violence in his name, something in defense of him, he's just going to pardon me. Someone who's not doesn't think this out all the way. But I mean, I think that sends a terrible signal, and I do worry about that. I worry about both sides, political violence on both sides, political violence, people that aren't necessarily ingrained on one of the two sides, but stuff like that. I mean, that's such a bad a precedent, and I really worry someone's gonna go down that line of thought and think I'm gonna get in trouble.
I want to be clear about something. If you, John, or I, or anybody else writes a piece, and you can go through the piece with a fine-tooth comb and say there's nothing that crosses a line on this, either a bright line or a dull line, nothing, and yet somebody reads it and does something violent as a result, that's on them. That's not on you. That's not on me. That's on them. Because if there are people out there that are going to see what they want to see, a journalist can't go into hiding because of people like that. We have to express our opinions, and as long as they're reasonable opinions and not opinions that clearly provoke violence, the people who commit violence, it's on them. I want to be very clear about that.
Yeah, no, I agree. So next topic, I have two more left, Bernie. I was going to talk to you about one you kind of already touched on, but I was going to ask you about predictions that you have for 2026. You already talked about the midterms, so that's a prediction that it's going to be a good year for Democrats. Do you have any other predictions you want to make for the coming year?
Well, I'm shocked that you would bring that up, John. How many times have I said I stopped making predictions after I confidently predicted that Donald Trump would not run in 2016. And if somehow he would run, but I said he wouldn't for sure, he certainly wouldn't win.
Maybe outside of elections predictions.
You know what? I'm trying to focus on today and tomorrow. I'm not looking too far into the future. What kind of predictions do you have in mind?
Well, for me, and I did touch on it a little bit, I do think the Supreme Court is going to strike down Trump's emergency tariffs. I think when that happens, it'll benefit the economy and the job market, and make things more affordable for the American people. We actually have to pay if the Supreme Court does rule in that way. The government has to take all the money that we've gotten from tariffs, all that revenue, and give them back to the people that paid them. That's gonna not be good for our coffers and everything, but it's at the same time, I think it's gonna be a good stimulus for the economy to put money back in people's pockets. So I think in a strange way, if that does happen, which again I think it will, I've talked to enough legal minds who seem to think that's the case, who've watched how the Supreme Court has handled it so far. I think in a weird way, it'll actually end up helping Donald Trump, because if the economy shoots back up, things do become more affordable, that's going to reflect positively on him while he's still in office, because people tend to associate how things are going on that front, fiscally and economically, with the person who's in charge. So I think in a way, the Supreme Court could save Trump from himself on this.
I'll make one prediction, and it's not a bold prediction. Whoever Donald Trump picks to replace Jay Powell as the chairman of the Federal Reserve will almost immediately cut rates, lead the movement at the Fed to cut interest rates, because that person will be picked because Donald Trump is picking that person to cut rates. So the Fed won't be independent. The Fed will be an arm of the Trump administration, which is not a good thing.
No, I agree. All right, so last question, Bernie, and I don't know if this is something that's going to connect with you or not, but New Year's resolutions. I was. Do you ever make them? Do you ever hold to them? Do you have any that you have for this coming year?
I'll answer all three of those questions. I used to make them. I don't anymore, and I don't because I don't follow them. I don't abide by them, and I'm not making any in the future because of the past.
All right.
How about you?
Yeah, I don't make a list or anything. I sort of think about things that I want to do differently in the new year, and I do want to sort of go back to doing making sure I get at least one new column every week on the website here. I usually do. I don't always. I always do the daily, weekly, the Friday Q&A. I also want to go back to getting the Daily Express podcast, maybe on a more regular basis, that I put out here through the website, and it's on the other platforms as well, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. But I want to do at least one of those at least twice a month, or 2 episodes a month. So yeah, just stuff like that. I want to kind of get back in. I've been working on some other projects that have kind of taken me in some other directions, so I don't have as much time to commit to those things. But I'm gonna make the time and get back to that. That might be bad news for our subscribers. I'm not sure, but hopefully some will see that as good news.
I'm going to do a favor for everybody listening to us and say goodbye, and say have a great new year. Do your best. Care less about things that you can care less about. Don't care less about your family, your loved ones, your friends. Don't care less about the quality of your work. But almost everything else you can care less about. And I strongly advise that you take my advice and care less. Have a great new year, John, and everybody listening to us. Bye-bye.